Up next, we have Ted Verani from Wappier, who is going to be talking about global pricing in an inflationary world. Of course, that's something that we all need to look at in general, really. But without further ado, take it away, Ted.
Okay. Thank you, Charlie. Can you all hear me now? Okay?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Good. Let me just get this thing here settled up here. Got my little... Oh, clipper. Excellent. All right. Hello. My name is Ted Verani. I am head of business development for Wappier. We're going to talk about global pricing in an inflationary world. Topic, pricing just in general is something I love. People have maybe seen some of my presentations, have done a few Pocket Gamers in the past to know that often talk about pricing and monetization. That's what our company Wappier does. The other reason that I like it because it's kind of core part of the marketing mix, pricing, but yet maybe doesn't quite get the attention or respect it deserves within the gaming community. So, which I guess is kind of good for us. That's what we do. A little quick background on the company, Wappier. Fundamentally, we're an AI company. We have some pretty robust machine learning technology that allows us to predict, understand player behavior. With that information, one of our core solutions is around pricing optimization, where we help companies like those that you can see on the board right now. But let's get into less about Wappier, maybe set the stage a little bit in terms of pricing, kind of the opportunity. So, this is not just about inflation, but in general with pricing, most developers, you have to just take a one-size-fits-all approach when it comes to pricing. And that approach is really pricing for the United States and then letting the app store do currency rate conversion for other countries. So simply put, mispriced the majority of the world. And by the way, that currency rate adjustment, that just happened when you first upload your game. So if you've, I think that we're on parity now between dollar and the euro. So now you're very mispriced if you uploaded your game a while ago, because people respond differently to different prices around the world, and this gets magnified different purchasing power, and that's really what we do. And then going forward, and now really what we want to talk about today is that inflation is worldwide. We're all experiencing it, but different countries are experiencing it differently. So setting the stage foundation is just a question. Like, it's early morning. By the way, thank you for coming. It's a horrible storm out there. We keep people in. Day 2 on a Pocket Gamer party, so I do appreciate you guys showing up. Question is, do you localize your game? Let's just stretch. Get that code. Okay, so different languages, right? So that's kind of intuitive, right? Obviously, we think, oh, of course, I'm a global player base, I should localize. So then the question I ask is, then why aren't you localizing pricing? That's like changing a number. Like, you, in effect, and then maybe, I don't mean to criticize, everyone, but, if you are just treating everyone like an American around the world, it's not right. There's no one size fits all when it comes to pricing. And currency rate conversion, as I mentioned, is not sufficient, for different players, because people respond differently to different prices. But to do this, it takes deep insights into local economies, purchasing power at a household level, and game information for local markets. You're going to need to be prepared to create hundreds or potentially even thousands of price SKUs, for your game. But if you do that right, it's really kind of the fastest, most effective way to boost the bottom line. When you think about it, making a game is hard. Live ops, ongoing, very expensive. Small change to a number that someone sees make all the difference between whether some converts into a payer and whether they'll continue paying within your game. Because global pricing, it's localizing pricing, right? That is localized pricing in a nutshell. And what we want to encourage first people is, and just setting a stage, is to move beyond thinking in terms of just local currency rates. Think in terms of optimizing IAPs according to local purchasing power on a per country basis. So that starts with understanding price elasticities, for the different game. But if you do this, this is borne out with the data, what kind of game, case studies that we've done. It's pretty reasonable to expect to see 20 to 40% increase their revenue across the target countries, across the different countries that you're optimizing. So think of it as outside of the US. That's the whole thesis of global pricing is, figuring you've done a good job already pricing your game for the US, the core economy there, but then now start thinking about outside the US and localizing it. What do we look at? What should you look at when you consider to get to this point? A lot of information in this slide. So feel free to reach out to me later. I can also send you this deck. I think it'll be published also. But when you're finding the optimal price, it's looking at macroeconomic data, and all this data is publicly available, right? So we look at GDP, country level, and we look at, and now we're monitoring inflation, which I'm going to get to that, share some insights, shortly. But it's also microeconomic data. It's also trying to get an idea of household purchasing power within, a group of countries. Like we just incorporated, internet penetration, buying rates just within our indices right now. But also it's game and it's statistics. So it's not just about the GDP in a per country level, but trying to overlay that, try to understand what is the GDP or the purchasing power of the gamer population on a per country level, right? And that's really kind of, again, the sweet spot understanding of getting the optimal price point. In our case, what you want to do is run a series of sequential price evaluations. And I can talk later more deeply about that in QA, what that means. Because really I want to get into because this question's been coming up to us. So as we already do this, I've mentioned to a lot of people out there, we already do global pricing. It's one of our core products as a company. But we got this question, we live in an inflationary world. How do you price for inflation? Became the question that we started getting. And just to, first sort of, set the stage, here too, what we want to think about here is that, first of all, the game market, it's booming. Can't talk about, go to a conference without talking about the statistics. So over half of the video game market, it's $100 billion. So, mobile gaming is huge, right? We already know that. And it's actually, pick your favorite analyst. Some people say declining. Some people actually still say growing. So I'm going to highlight the growing, maybe 5% annually. So it's been slowing down versus recent years. But when you think about how large is massive market, the fact it's still growing is pretty good. Top publishers, out there, they're investing. They absolutely facing headwinds. With ATT, we're seeing the news. Even the top publishers have been laying off, people, organization, but they're also investing, in the core game titles. So if they have a profitable game franchise, they're still doing live ops in it. They're adding to the game. Maybe they're not greenlighting as much, projects going forward, but they're absolutely still investing in their titles. They're looking to, grow the margins more within the games. But that's the market in general. But what we've also now let's talk about what's happening, in the broader market is, largely first with the global pandemic. What we saw is that it sparked a period of pretty economic uncertainty. First, because of pandemic, what we weren't buying through anything. Manufacturers stopped, producing goods. People started laying off employees. Suddenly, opening up, the world opens up. We have all this pent-up demand. So two things happened: pent-up demand. Everyone started buying some stuff, combined with production not being there. And then exacerbated by supply chain issues, as we became much more of a global economy, supply chain issues constricted the supply. Prices started going up. We started seeing a massive increase of prices, going up. And that's some of the data I'll show you. And then this was exacerbated, in the more recent months, unfortunately, with the war, in Ukraine, is seeing a spike in energy prices. So already transportation costs going up because of supply chain issues. Suddenly the cost to move goods from place A to place B has gone up, has increased for that. So the result being and just energy in general, right? It's just gas tank your car. Most goods, energy is a component of that. So that itself has caused inflation, and that's what we're seeing. So top chart there is you can see the spike there in the recent months in the last year. As the U.S., is there just up, we're just above 8%. Biggest inflation we've seen in generation, in the U.S. Bottom is the snapshot of March earlier this year. EU averaged 7.8% inflation, so also quite high. Some doing better, in the lower end. Some doing far worse. But across the board, here in the EU. High, and you see the countries on the right, you can't probably read them, but, a lot of them are just, bordering the Russia. So that energy prices stuff hitting them particularly hard, in the Netherlands there too. So then, so we're living in an inflationary world, and what's that mean in terms of the entertainment and the games market in general? Across the board, what we're seeing, just the analysts saying what they're saying is that, consumers are tightening their belts, and reducing entertainment budgets. If you think of an entertainment budget as being a finite pie, amount of resource there, you're gonna divvy up that pie, different slices, and across your different entertainment options. And then a lot of people just, even if you have your job, you're just I don't know what the future holds, right? That kind of sort of uncertainty has led to people to be a little more cautious in how they're spending things. That said, and however, for the people in this room, in the industry that, we enjoy being part of, I'm here to say mobile games, they're a pretty good alternative, versus a lot of other forms of entertainment. You think about going out to a movie, movies have gone up, you maybe want to go out and get a bite to eat first, or like myself, big fan of live music. We didn't go to music during concerts during the pandemic, opened up suddenly. I don't know why, concerts are a lot more expensive now than they were before, and I think there's a lot of good reasons, for that. But still, it's a lot of your forms of entertainment, are very, very expensive. So you think about a game, even if you've lost your job, you spend a few bucks in a week, that's not going to change your circumstances too much. Even if it's just a few bucks. Bottom line is if, the game is bringing you joy, it can make sense financially, for you because your circumstances won't really change. So. But going back to what I was saying earlier, games with the right pricing model, global pricing kind of model, is going to gain sort of a competitive advantage versus other forms when they attract kind of more payers into the game. So how does inflation really now directly impact with games? Okay, so don't expect anyone to read that. And those are just really sort of beautification elements of the slides anyway. So it's the point is, we did a Pearson's correlation coefficient model, analyze it. So at a very high level, you look at that. Okay, what we're seeing is game revenue. That's this top charts. It's MEA country, that's representative North America, it's US. We're seeing kind of revenue sort of going down across KPIs, right? On the bottom, you overlay that. Okay, CPI, the Consumer Price Index, measure for inflation, going up and going up more dramatically. So, if you stare at that for a bit, you go, all right, inflation goes up, key KPIs, ARPU, revenue for games going down. Okay, not a good story. So perhaps there's a adverse impact of inflation on games. So, worthy of some further study. So we did analysis. What we did, because we do work with a lot of games in a lot of different countries, because the global pricing products have that sort of benefit. We did an analysis of the first half of 2022. We just we're getting kind of being announced here on Pocket Gamer stage, some of the first results. We're going to publish the study. We analyzed revenue fluctuations over a large number of games first part of the year, correlation, but sad to say, inconclusive. And we did see sort of decrease in revenue. The hard part here is that we weren't really able to parse out sort of the differences. So was it inflation, because that is absolutely what's happening during time? Or was it that we're comparing ourselves to the COVID bump, right? Because as we all know, while a lot of other people, unfortunately, were hurting, during COVID, we as an industry saw like the biggest gains ever, right? We just people, like I was saying earlier about an entertainment pie, all those other entertainment options, went to zero, and then suddenly more people were playing video games. And of course, we benefited from that. Now we're comparing ourselves to those lofty levels. So, in fact, and I guess it's a remind ourselves that even if they feel bad, they're not so bad. They're not like before, the pandemic level. So we should remind ourselves that even if they're going down, versus the prior months, we going down compared to sort of just massive, growth. So it's hard to separate that out. But we weren't really satisfied with that too, because we work with customers. They're asking us questions. So we have some economists, we have some data scientists. What we did, we decided we're going to run an experiment, right? In our experiment, what we did is we selected a bunch of games where we applied, and we did this first. We looked at we grabbed all the different countries. We looked at European countries. We looked at Asian countries. We looked at North, South America, some Africa. And we don't really touch a lot of African countries. Took all these different countries. Within those, we took within each individual country, we took a bunch of games where we applied a uniform price reduction of 5% on all prices, across there, just to measure a small change, in price, measure impact. We also took comparable bunch of games, same country, and we did an increase, 5%. We did this in the summer months to see what would be the impact. What did we find? So now we're getting some findings and stuff, outcomes. The outcome showed that actually high inflation, EU countries, most notably, Germany, France, Italy, Netherlands, they actually respond with a spike in revenue, where prices dropped. So that, we were able to, so some of these high, if you had more inflation in your country actually lowering of price. So despite everything else is going up, maybe lowering a little bit of price, 9Ps had a positive impact on revenue. Whereas if you raised price, during this inflationary time, or with a country that had higher inflation, than some other countries, you lost revenue on that. And then this sort of overall sort of observation was further borne out by when we looked at, because we saw what we observed is countries with minimal inflation actually performed better with the higher prices. And that's notably Australia. We saw that it's also in Switzerland. We often see raised price in Switzerland is positive. The Hong Kong, Japan, right? So if these countries had relatively low inflation, compared to other parts of the world, small increase in price actually led to an increase, in revenue, for them. Maybe they just lots of money and they're just, expecting all prices to go up. Didn't really bother them. I'm not sure exactly why. And then what we did, and then just with some customers, it presents an opportunity here, and then we saw then revenue growth of between 11% and 33% compared to high inflation. So specifically some EU countries, and a control group from last 3 months. So it worked, just testing. Now, when I say it worked, I'm a marketing guy, a business guy, here too. I'm going to add that little asterisk note. Our head of data analytics and our economists insisted to put a note that this really was based on a small number of games and countries sampled. So to be fair, we don't say this is scientifically conclusive, with it. We did do a lot of parsing out data. We had a hard time. So this is more observational. This is, outcomes, we say. So, but that's kind of what we're saying. But, again, just would be clear, it is, more study analysis, is warranted on that. But these are some of the things we did observe from Heckler. And part of the reason, just to further elaborate why we had a harder time, as a company and for our customers, we don't normally have large EU countries in the control group, which you could probably appreciate. We're trying to make money for our customers, so we don't put France and Germany and other big countries in the control group. We put them in the pricing group, right? When we have a control group, we take a country that's large enough to be statistically valid, stable revenue over the last 12 months too, but not massive overall revenue, because our goal is just to boost the bottom line, and we want to apply that to a larger revenue base. So sadly, from a scientific sort of economic study, it wasn't as conclusive. However, I studied economics as an undergrad, but I'm not an economist. But I do, observations that I think are worth sort of sharing. While it is truly hard to parse out the exact amount that caused by inflation, because of the COVID, comparing yourself to the COVID bump, it is also reasonable, I think, and good to sort of think about lowering price in high inflation countries. Give them a break. Everything around, gas is more expensive, milk, goods that they need to survive. Maybe you're better off to kind of give a price break to them. Don't go like everyone else who's raising price during that time. You may see positive results. But test it, and I'd say test. That's what we do for everything. So you can do that yourself. But just a comment on how to test is that when you're measuring performance on a per country basis, you're going to have a small number of payers, small number of revenue. So you need some time to flow. You need transactions to flow through the system. You need more payers to come in and out of your game. So when we do price adjustments, it's once a month, right? So I know in our world game, we'd like to make a change, and tomorrow look at the results and see what the impact out. So I resist that temptation. You're going to have to be patient, make a change, wait a month, see how it bores out, make another adjustment. And typically in our programs, when we launch with people, it takes like 3 months to get to a point of stability. The other point, and this is really kind of more my comment and observation, I think is more important, is rather than just looking at inflation, look at the combination of inflation with high unemployment rate. Because in the US, for instance, right now, yes, inflation's high around 8%, but also unemployment, everyone has a job. We're having a hard time, and it's really the lower end service level jobs. Those people are all getting pricing, which thankfully, right, it's good. They're getting actually raises to get to hire people. They're paying more for salaries and wages. End result is that actually their wages are going up higher than the cost of things they're purchasing. So while they are experiencing inflation, they actually have more disposable income to buy stuff with too. And then if you think about people in the upper end, there's whales in your game, right? Anyone who's spending hundreds or thousands of dollars in your game, they're probably not impacted by the price of gas. Okay, so they're going to still continue spending in the game. So that just a comment with that too. And then running out of time here, so just some Thanks. Closing thoughts is here too. Think about global optimization program. And beyond just thinking, don't just, I'm in inflation, I got to figure out what to do because of inflation. You need to be thinking about the world is a very diverse place with a lot of different players in your games around the world. So you've got to think about, that's what we do. We optimize prices, and that is the best way to protect your income. So when during times of sort of economic stress or whatever, you've already done the work to sort of price appropriately for different countries. And that's what we do, something you can do, on an ongoing basis. Monthly, we're doing regression analysis. We're looking at the indices. We're making adjustments to prices. And simply put, we think a lot about the economy, what's going on, so that, game developers, they can spend their time making a fun game that people want to play and think about the in-game economy. And we can help with pricing. But it's also something you do yourself. Ran out of time. We have these on our website, case studies, on there too. So wappier.com. We have a very stark-looking table out there. Actually, our table's right there. So myself, Carlos, we're out there. If you have any questions about what we're doing, or just in general questions about what I shared today. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Ted. And as Ted said, you can catch him at his table over there, or you can connect with him on LinkedIn or Meet to Match if you have any other questions.